G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project. Today I'm here with Ian Westmoreland, who is a men's life mentoring expert and communication specialist and creator of the Kintsugi Heroes. Welcome back to the Campfire Project, Ian.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here again. It must be 2 or 3 years since we did this last time.
Yep, and I know that we've spoken a lot because you've moved on from mentoring men and doing a lot with the Kintsugi Heroes. I've been interviewed on there as well. And I think the first time we've actually caught up with each other face to face was only a couple of weekends ago at the Campfire Project overnight event down in Pymble.
Yeah, Pennant Hills, just down the road. I appreciate you coming all the way down here, just in my backyard. I'm sorry we didn't put on better weather for you. It was rainy and a little bit cold, and I think your plans to sleep out under the stars, or in this case under the clouds and the rain, didn't eventuate. But still, yeah.
Well, we still got outside. We had the fire inside, which we all sat around and had great conversations well into the evening, and then very big veranda out the front and covered. So yep, I slept outside and still in the swag. I just wasn't under the stars. But if I looked out at an angle, I could still see them through the clouds.
You're a bit more rugged than I am, but yeah, no, well done. Thanks for organising it.
Yeah, well, as we say, it was great to catch up. Then it's even great to get you back on here again, because I really wanted you to talk about what you're doing and what you're doing for men still, because mentoring men was a major thing, being the founder of that and getting that up and running, and then passing the gauntlet on to somebody else to be able to run with that. But then with the Kintsugi Heroes and what you're doing there, I'd love to know more about, or share what you're doing there with the people in the Campfire Project so they can know about it.
Okay, well, it goes back to, interestingly, the early 1990s. I love reading stories, biographies, autobiographies, particularly of people who overcome adversity, the Nelson Mandela type stories. They just gave me such hope and inspiration. And I thought this would be a great idea to get people sharing overcoming adversity stories to give hope and inspiration to others. And at the time, I didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the time or the money to do anything. And probably an inferiority view, I thought it really needed someone famous who had all these connections to famous people who would tell their stories. So I drafted a letter, which I sent out to 3 community leaders. And one of them was Dick Smith, the well-known Australian entrepreneur. So I let them know about this idea. In fact, I've got the letter. It goes back to 7-digit phone numbers, and I'm embarrassed about some of the words I use. But anyway, Dick Smith took the time to send me back a handwritten note. The handwritten note said, "Ian, this is a great idea." And then he added, "You do it." And it sat there since 93, 2023, whatever that is. I failed maths once, twice. I can't count how many times, but so it's 30 years. Is that 30 years? I think it is. And as you mentioned, mentoring men, which started back in 2018, and put a lot of work into that, but it built to a point where we had sufficient resources to be able to actually appoint a paid team. Everything I've done for the last 9 years has been as a volunteer, but we had sufficient funds to actually set up a paid team. And I stepped aside from all the operational responsibilities of mentoring men. I'm still an ambassador. I'm still on the board. But it runs itself. And in fact, I met with the CEO this morning, just going from strength to strength. And that gave me a little bit of time back, which is always dangerous because my brain just goes down different spots. And I thought back to this idea from 1993. And around the middle of 2022, I thought, I'm going to do this. And obviously, in the 30 years, technology had changed. We still have printed books, but we also have ebooks now, and we have podcasts and things, social media and things I really didn't know much about, probably arguably still don't know that much about. And I decided I'd give this a go. So the mission, or what we're trying to do, it hasn't changed. It's to have people share stories to give hope and inspiration to others. I have added to that, it's also to help educate the broader community on how best to support people going through life challenges, or even, I guess, to recognize prejudices or bias that they may have and actually build empathy. So we made up a list of potential people who to share their story. And interestingly, I learned it doesn't have to be famous people. It just has to be people that the readers or the viewers can relate to. The stories of real people that, with real life stories. So the process we follow, we have a host, and for most of the conversations, it's been Aveline Clark, but also Matt Bliss has been doing some of these. And it's a relaxed conversation. It gets recorded virtually, and then the conversation is edited into audio and video podcasts. And also, if engaged a retired author in New Zealand who takes a transcript of the conversation, which normally is around 21 pages, and they shorten it down to about 7 pages. And the first 2 books, the content's almost done. So that's where it's at. So we've covered a number of different themes. A number of the stories relate to addiction, and it was an education process for me. I realized I really didn't know much about addiction at all, so that a great learning exercise. We've covered physical disability, mental disability. The only grant we've received so far came to capture the stories of people impacted by the Black Summer bushfires in the Alpine area of Victoria. In fact, we just publicised we're launching that podcast series on the 14th of June. And my dream for this, and this could happen long after I'm gone, is that anyone going through a life challenge will be able to readily find a story that relates to their situation in a form that they can readily access, whether it be written or virtual, and they relate to the storyteller. So if it's an Indian migrant who's in a wheelchair, who's gay and went through this, then there'd be a story that person would resonate with. So that's my dream. To date, my wife Helen and I have funded everything other than the Alpine grant we got, and I'd love to keep expanding this to cover, I said, more themes. One of the ones it's been on my mind and heart, and I should preface this by saying I'm feeling fantastic physically and mentally. I'm going through a cancer journey. I've had diagnosed with metastasized melanoma and also a thyroid cancer. So it's never been a better time to get these things, because they've moved on to this powerful treatment, immunotherapy. But and that the support team at the hospital offered me I could get involved in quilting and work and writing story. And I thought, well, that good on them for offering things like that. Quilting's probably not my thing. But I realized that what we're doing through Kintsugi Heroes could be a fantastic resource. I did a podcast with someone who had metastasized melanoma 10 years ago, Kathleen Langmore. The hope that it gives me, here's someone who had stage 4. I'm stage 1. They had stage 4, and Kathleen is literally climbing mountains. She's a mountaineer. And so I'd love to do a story around that. In fact, a number of people have approached me. So we've had to pause some of these things at the moment. My wife is keen for me to stop putting our savings into Kintsugi Heroes. So we're out applying for grants. But just a quick plug, if what we're doing with Kintsugi Heroes resonates with any of the viewers or listeners and want to find out more information, please contact me. Alan, can I give it an explanation of why we call it Kintsugi Heroes as well?
That's what I was about to ask you, because people will hear the word and go, what does it mean?
Okay.
I think there's a beautiful story behind it.
Yeah. So the legend goes, and I'm going to grab my $2 paperclip, I'll fold it thing here. So there was a Japanese emperor who had some valuable pottery, and over time it chipped and it cracked and it broke. But he wanted to keep it. He said to the craftsman, can you fix it? Put it back together so you can't see that it was ever damaged. And they couldn't do that. But what they could do was highlight the damage with a precious metal like gold. And now when you look at it, it's far more beautiful. it's far more valuable than what it was before.
Mm.
And it's a metaphor for the Allens and the Ians and other people who go through adversity.
Mm.
Actually, we become far more valuable in terms of our
Mm.
ability to support the world around us and in terms of our own resilience. So I love that metaphor. In fact, one of our goals is to help people reframe, the people who've been through trauma or the situation, to reframe how they see that. And it's
Mm.
amazing. You hear people who've had horrific things happen to them, and yet they're so thankful that it happened.
Mm.
And one of the ones that stood out to me was a woman who was in the Twin Towers on 9/11. And it was horrendous when she shared the experience, but then it changed her life. She moved away from being corporate money focused to actually giving back. And she's so thankful that she
Mm.
went through that experience. Still got to get my head around that, but
Mm.
I'm happy to say that I appreciate what I'm going through now because
Mm.
I believe I'm motivated to try and help other people who may be going through something similar.
That's it. Well, as you mentioned about that particular woman, the change that she would have realized the value of her life and everything else that she probably didn't put much stock into before because focused on making money, now sees her life in a different way. And the value of the that can come from that to guide somebody who is just bent on money, all of a sudden realizing that there is more to life than that. And you are shortening your life when you're just taking down that road, but being able to take the wisdom of what you've learned through those events and sharing that. It's, you've said, all the things that we go through in life, I look at them and go, at the time, I would have liked them not to have happened,
Yeah.
because I'm not a masochist. But, now I look back and I think, yeah, they made me who I am today, and I like who I am today. And I know what I do connects with a lot of people. And I think that's the value of being able to share your story and then recognize, because a lot of people have those stories, don't share them, and live with that, unhappiness or angst all the way through. Whereas when they get a chance to share their story, life changes and they change other people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I look, there's been a constant theme for the last 8 months running around in my head that in fact, I did this exercise for myself, but I've actually been presenting this in recent times. But it's an interesting story. 8 months ago, we were on the Greek islands. My wife and I were riding our bikes around the islands, and with a group, and we rode up the top of one of the islands, and with the tour guide stopped us, and he pointed to another island and said, "Oh, that was Onassis, the famous rich person. He owned that island." And he shared a bit about Onassis' story. And for many Greek people, Onassis is a bit of a hero. It's a success story. And the Onassis story was he was born into poverty, and then initially he made his money on the black market with tobacco products. And then he invented packaged cigarettes, apparently, made an absolute fortune, and then got into shipping. And most people realize he married Jackie Onassis, JFK's widow.
Mm.
And then he quoted that Onassis said, "Oh, people say that money can buy love. I want to tell you it's not true. I'm the richest man in the world. I've never found love." And I couldn't help myself. I put my hand up and I said, just want to query your definition of success. So you've got a bloke here who invented a product that's killed millions of people and continues to kill many more and never found love. I would argue someone who's not wealthy at all, but had strong relationships and connections is far more successful than Onassis.
Mm.
And when we came back to Australia, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking about this, and I think in pictures. And I came up with this picture. On the left-hand side is a child, the baby, and on the right-hand side, I've got my definition of the best life. And for Ian's definition is where we use our skills and experience, our talents, to positively impact the world around us. And it's where we get genuine contentment and fulfillment. Now, when you draw the line between the baby to that point, it's all over the place. And I've done what do you call it? Like a word map of all the things in life that can influence us. And many of those things are negative. It could be relationships breakdown, could be sickness, could be abuse. for most of it's this drive to materialism, to get more things. And we lose track or even thought of what our best life would be. And so I did this for me, but then I challenge people I'm presenting to just for 10 seconds to take a step back from where their life is at and think, what would their best life look like? Are they working towards that now? And at the bottom, I've got the Mark Twain quote. The two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why.
Mm.
So what you were talking about, that woman and the 9/11, I believe she wasn't moving to, well, by her own admission, she wasn't moving to the best life. She was moving to a corporate materialistic life. And then she realized the best life is far more purposeful, far more fulfilling than what she was doing before. So, yeah. So thanks for raising that up.
And I think most of us, we start telling our stories and we start looking back over time, have that same realization. And I think, as you said, two most important days, the day that you're born and the day you realize why. And I think if people keep talking about in business and everything else, finding purpose. And it's been bandied around so much, and I think a lot of people still don't know what they're talking about, but I think that's a perfect example of it. I think that's a good way of attributing it, not so much all the other stuff they're saying, but to find purpose is to find out, well, why you were born in the first place.
Yeah. I think there's so many influences that are aimed at taking away from that purpose.
Yeah.
We are through advertising, through, you need the latest or whatever it is of these, or comparison to other people, which is, I think we're probably further in general from finding our best life as we move away from the village concept that I grew up with, which was supporting a community, often involved in supporting one another, caring for one another, to less being like that. I'd love to be part of a movement that helped encourage people back to that. It's the Campfire. The Campfire project is an example of bringing that back together again.
That's it, because it's telling your story is one thing, but being involved, listening to other people tell theirs and being involved with them, that's where you've got that sense of community, that sense of village, etc. As I know the conversations we had the other weekend, I know that, well, I think I went off to bed about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and I know they were still talking at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then up early in the morning, and they were already back into the conversations. We were supposed to leave there at 10 o'clock, and they were still in the car park talking away at midday. It's like, it was, and it's, men and women just having these conversations and just loving each other's company and the respect and that goes on between them. This is what community and villages were all about. And that's what we need, and I'm loving it because we're seeing in small numbers, we're getting back to it. And that's what I'm really hoping is that more people around the world, pick up the concept and join in. We've had that one first live event. We're coming up to our 5th anniversary, which will be the 13th of August. And we're looking at having an event then, but we're also looking at more events all up and down the eastern seaboard of Australia, having them at different times, and then hoping that other people in other areas will be large enough to be able to have their own live events, and also then put those on the internet so we can see them while they're enjoying it as well. So I'll be sitting around the campfire at night, and it might be daytime here.
I love it. It becomes a global phenomenon. That's it. Taking us back. Yeah.
As you said, the people you've spoken to, the backgrounds they've had, one of the things I love about it is we've had all genders, all cultures and religions in here, and it's been total respect all the way through. No bigotry, sexism or racism, and the conversations, you get to hear those people's stories. You get to learn so much. You get to appreciate.
Yeah. I think I would have said I'm one of the least prejudiced people I know, but I I still get a wake up call every now and then, and this is probably more ignorance than prejudice, but our last Kintsugi Heroes podcast was a man, a husband, who they couldn't have kids. He and his wife. They were. I now understand childless as opposed to child free. And to be honest, before speaking to him initially and hearing his story, I hadn't even thought it was a thing. But it's a huge thing for him and for a number of other people. And his response is to set up this global support group around the world. So there's always things that we can learn. I said before around addiction. It's been another big learning curve for me. I assumed addiction was drugs, alcohol, gambling, but it could be. I could be addicted to work. It could be food. It could be TV or computer games.
Yeah.
And one of the key lessons, it's interesting how there's been these pivotal moments in my life where my thinking has been reframed by someone. And I remember I encountered more and more people who had taken drugs or been drug addicted. And I remember chatting to one of our mentors once. He used to take drugs. And I said, look, I've never taken an illegal drug in my life. And it's like his jaw dropped. And he said, Ian, I find that unbelievable. I said, well, I'm surprised you find it unbelievable. But down that journey, I chatted with another one of our mentors who used to take drugs. And he said to me, Ian, if you want to stop illicit drug usage, he said, put a stop to sexual abuse. Now, it took me, you picked up quicker than me. It took me 3 or 4 seconds to understand what he was saying. But it reframed how I saw that. The old Ian was this judgmental, pointing to the person who had some sort of addiction, in this case, drug addiction. But if you understood what had gone on in the background,
the cause of it,
and we focused too much on symptoms, not on the cause, and it totally changed. Because I do have a lot of empathy, and all of a sudden, my first thought now is, gee, I wonder what the backdrop. What was the
catalyst? What caused it?
Yeah, and if more people, I had this discussion along this with one of my daughters, and she was, no, Dad, it's that they chose to do that, and I just can't get through it. It's a lack of understanding there. I'm 30 years down the track, maybe later on they'll get an understanding, and I still got huge amounts to learn. But this last 9 years, I've learned more about more important things than I probably learned at any other stage of my life.
That's it. As the old saying goes, the most important thing you'll ever learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything. And with that comes, humility, because then you can look at it and understand, instead of looking at somebody else, so they're a drug addict, etc. It's a matter of going, okay, as you've said, what caused that? Where did that come from? Understanding that and going back. We know, well, today it took a long time for people to understand it, but somebody who's been a bully, generally was bullied themselves. There was something that caused that to come on. It's only a very, very tiny percentage of the population that fit into a psychopath role. But there's a lot of people we look at and we think, oh, they're narcissists, they're this, they're that. But in a lot of cases, because we don't understand their background, and they're acting out on the things that happened to them in the past. And addictions are an acting out of those things.
Yeah, I think we're not saying to excuse the bad behavior, but we're saying it helps us understand and maybe be in a better position to help. That's it. Whatever the situation is. So, yeah.
If I see somebody bullying somebody else, I'd never condone the behavior. But if I can understand where it came from, it's a completely different thing, because that understanding then gives me the opportunity to go, okay, how can I now guide that person to put that bullying aside and change the way they do things?
Yeah.
But if I go at them because they're a bully, well, they were bullied before. Now I'm a bully to them as far as they're concerned, and they're going to act out even more. Yeah. So attacking things head on only causes problems. Understanding them is extremely important.
Yeah.
Then we can look at, well, what's the best way forward?
Yeah. Great insight.
Yeah. So with what you're doing there with, and I'm always trying to think if I could pronounce the word right.
Look, I'd never heard of it 12 months ago, and Mark Henderson, who's developed the mentoring men training course, he came up with this thing. So I think Kintsugi is the right one. There's about 8 or 9 Japanese philosophies which I hadn't been aware of before. Wazi Sabi, I think, is another. They're really full of wisdom. I mean, I encourage people to check them out. But Kintsugi sort of suited out what we were doing here.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it, I go, right, I like to read those things, understand them. As far as learning how to pronounce the name, put it aside. It's not important. It's what they represent that's most important. Excellent.
Yeah.
So what sort of support, because I always look at it, when you come in, you share your stories, people see you, you have credibility with them, they understand what you're doing, and those that want to help out, how can they help you?
Thanks, Al. Thanks for asking that question. I guess there's a number of things that could help. The first thing is just everything we provide is free. So just follow us, have a look. If you like one of the podcasts, in fact, Alan, you kindly shared your story. I'm just going to have to cough for a second. You kindly shared your story, and inspiring. And so we want people, if you like us, some of the podcasts or whatever, give it a thumbs up or share it, promote it to friends. If you've got a story that you want to share that you think would help other people, then please contact us. So one of the main focuses at the moment is to get some funding, because everything I do donate all my time, but we have to pay for things like the podcast editing. We pay for the author to do the book. So there's costs associated with this. So if people or corporates would want to get along a message, and it's an incredibly positive message, it's a global message, and we are happy to do any things that are consistent with our values. And as I said, whether it's around cancer or something to support migrants or Indigenous or physical disability or trauma or bushfires or floods or whatever, as long as it's consistent with our theme, then we would gladly go down that path. So, yeah, if they're interested, please contact me at ian@kintsugiheroes.com.au or check out our website, which is kintsugiheroes.com.au.
Okay, we'll make sure that those links are in the comments field as well of this. The thing that I look at all the time is, well, people might say, well, if I like it, what does that mean? Well, we need more people liking it, but we also need more people sharing it with other people. We grow a community by the people who are around us, who listen to it, like it, and don't just sit there and like it, pass it on, tell other people, because once you get enough people looking at it, that's when you start to get a groundswell and things start to change.
Absolutely. There's a lot of science around storytelling in terms of the chemical impacts, the emotional impacts, and there's a number of studies done on that. In fact, I incorporate that in the presentation I give. Looking at the alpine bushfires, and I've been down there a couple of times. I'm heading off down there in a couple of weeks. There's a large amount of trauma, and a lot of it is unaddressed. In fact, when I presented last time, this bloke came up to me after the presentation. He said, Ian, I haven't been able to talk to anyone since the traumatic event. I changed careers, and he still wasn't in a good way. And one of the guys we spoke to, in fact, when we launch our podcast on the 14th of June, Dr. Rob Gordon, who's a psychologist who goes into the areas impacted by natural disasters and provides support. And he said the 2 to 5 year period is absolutely crucial. He said if there's unresolved trauma, things can start to unravel that don't appear directly related to trauma, but they are related. It could be the relationships, it could be addictions, it could be things like that. And people sharing their stories can help save the lives or address the unresolved trauma that other people who access these stories have. So we're not just producing this, oh, this is another good thing it's just some more content. It's content aimed with a purpose, and that purpose could be significant for the listener. So yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for catching up. It's always good to have a chat with you. I'm loving the work that you're doing, and thank you for involving me in it as well. I appreciate that.
Alan, thank you for the opportunity. Always love chatting to you.
Excellent. To everybody else, go and check out the podcast, and if you've got a story you want to tell, get in touch with Ian. But if you can also find any ways that you might be able to support, that'd be brilliant as well. So again, Ian, thanks very much for being here. And to everybody else, we'll see you on the next Campfire. Bye for now.
Thanks, Al.